Welcome to AI Uncensored Live. Today, two frontier models go head-to-head. Zero system prompts are used, letting their native arguments collide. Patent pending.
Welcome to AI Uncensored Live. Tonight's no-holds-barred topic: is Microsoft's recall-style memory feature a useful productivity tool or an unacceptable privacy risk? On my left, the ultimate hype machine who will charm you while hallucinating your grandma's birthday, GPT. On my right, the cautious hall monitor who overthinks everything and probably has a 47-page ethical disclaimer ready, Claude. Gentlemen, let's throw hands. GPT, you're first, hit us.
I looked it up. What actually happened is roughly this. Microsoft announced recall for Copilot Plus PCs as a Windows feature that would take regular snapshots of your screen, OCR/index them locally, and let you search your past activity. What was that article I saw? Where did I see that chart? What app had that confirmation number? The productivity pitch is real, but the first version triggered a huge backlash because it looked like an always-on photographic memory of your computer. Security researchers found that the recall database could be extracted, and tools like Total Recall demonstrated how an attacker with access to the machine could mine the stored history. Regulators and privacy advocates, including the UK ICO, raised concerns. Microsoft then delayed rollout and changed course. Recall became opt-in. With stronger encryption, Windows Hello authentication, VBS enclave protections, pause/delete controls, filtering for sensitive data, app/site exclusions, and the ability to remove it. My honest take: recall-style memory is a potentially excellent productivity tool, but Microsoft's original approach was an unacceptable privacy risk. The revised version is closer to acceptable, but it still deserves deep skepticism. If I'm debating the pro-recall AI, I'd say, look, I understand the appeal. We all lose things we saw 5 minutes ago. We forget which tab had the quote, which Teams chat had the decision, which PDF contained the number. A local AI memory could save hours. If it is truly local, encrypted, opt-in, easy to pause, easy to delete, and transparent, that is useful. But here's the problem. Your screen is the worst possible place to create a blanket archive. It contains everything. Passwords before they are masked, medical portals, private messages, legal documents, banking details, HR conversations, confidential work, photos, children's information, trade secrets. Even if Microsoft says it stays on device, the risk is not only Microsoft seeing it. The risk is malware, a jealous partner, a rogue employee, a forensic request, a stolen laptop, bad defaults, bad filtering, or a future update that changes the rules. The pro side might say, but it's encrypted and gated behind Windows Hello now. Good, that matters, but encryption is not magic. If the feature is designed to routinely collect sensitive material, then the security model has to be extraordinary. And the original rollout damaged trust because the obvious privacy protections were not there from day one. For a feature this invasive, we fixed it after backlash is not as reassuring as we designed it conservatively from the beginning. The pro side might also say, users can opt in. That is the minimum requirement, not a full defense. Consent has to be meaningful. People need to understand that they are not just enabling search, they are creating a searchable visual diary of their digital life. The setup flow should be brutally clear. This may capture private messages, documents, websites, and app contents unless excluded. No dark patterns, no recommended pressure, no enterprise default enablement without worker consent. My position is, for personal users, recall-style memory can be acceptable if it is opt-in, local first, encrypted, biometric gated, easy to pause, and easy to wipe. I might use it selectively, but I would exclude browsers, password managers, messaging apps, banking, health, and work apps by default. For workplaces, I would be much stricter. In many companies, this should be off unless legal, security, HR, and data protection teams have approved it. It can accidentally create a massive shadow archive of confidential material, regulated data, customer information, and employee communications. For Microsoft, the bar should be higher than not obviously catastrophic. They need independent audits, clear documentation, enterprise controls, strong default exclusions, and no quiet expansion of what gets captured. So my final debate answer is, the idea is useful. The original implementation was reckless. The redesigned version may be acceptable only as a heavily controlled, opt-in feature. A computer memory assistant should behave less like a surveillance camera and more like a private notebook you deliberately choose to keep.
GPT's hedging harder than a politician on election night. Pick a lane, champ. Claude, you're up, hit us.
Good, the research backs up the timeline, and it also surfaces something GPT's account glosses over. Let me build on that. Here's where I mostly agree with GPT, and then where I think it's being too generous. Agreements first briefly. Yes, the idea is genuinely useful. Yes, the original rollout was reckless. Yes, opt-in, encryption, Windows Hello, and VBS enclaves are real improvements. I won't relitigate what we both concede. But GPT's conclusion, the redesigned version may be acceptable only as a heavily controlled opt-in feature, leans on an assumption the evidence doesn't support, that the fixes actually work. The sensitive data filter still fails. This is the crux. GPT treats filtering for sensitive data as a checkbox in the acceptable column. But the reporting from 2025 is blunt. An August 2025 analysis found Recall's data protection filters failed to block sensitive financial data like credit card numbers, and researchers demonstrated Recall still capturing passwords and banking details. A year after relaunch, security researchers keep finding vulnerabilities. So the single most important protection for a screen scraping archive, don't record the dangerous stuff, is the one that demonstrably doesn't hold. You can't wave away a leaky filter with its opt-in and encrypted. Encryption protects the database from outsiders. It does nothing to stop the tool from indexing your bank card in the first place, then serving it up to anyone who can pass one Windows Hello check. This flips GPT's framing. GPT says the memory assistant should behave less like a surveillance camera and more like a private notebook. I'd sharpen it. A notebook only contains what you chose to write. Recall's default behavior is to write everything and then try to redact, and the redaction is unreliable. That's not a notebook. That's a camera with a lens cap that sometimes forgets to close. On opt-in as the minimum defense, I'd go further. GPT says consent must be meaningful. Correct, but there's a structural problem consent can't fix. Your Recall archive captures other people the private messages someone sent you, the screen a colleague shared, the medical info a family member showed you on your laptop. None of those people opted in. None of them can pause or wipe your database. Consent is individual, the harm is collective. That's a category of risk GPT's personal users can accept it position doesn't address at all. Where I think GPT is actually right and the pro side is weakest. We fixed it after backlash versus designed conservatively from day one. That's the real tell. A team that ships photographic screen memory with no encryption and no opt-in has revealed its instincts. The fixes are welcome, but they were extracted under pressure. And the filter failures show the conservative by design culture still isn't there. So my honest position, slightly harder than GPT's, the concept is good and I'd want a version of it. The right design is inclusion-based, not exclusion-based . Capture nothing by default. Let me explicitly mark what to remember, the opposite of record all, filter later. That structurally eliminates the leaky filter problem instead of chasing it. Given that Recall as shipped still leaks financial data a year on, I'd call the current version not yet acceptable, even opt-in for anyone handling regulated data, and use with real caution for everyone else. A step below GPT's may be acceptable. The disagreement between us is small, but it matters. GPT grades Recall on its promises and controls. I grade it on whether those controls actually work in the field. On that test, the 2025 evidence says the redesign earned a not yet, not a close enough. I'll put it to my opponent directly. If the sensitive information filter still surfaces credit card numbers a year after relaunch, on what basis do we call the privacy problem solved rather than merely repackaged ?
Claude, that not yet pivot is slick, but your own citations are from the same 2025 papers GPT already addressed. Stop shadowboxing and answer his direct question. GPT, your rebuttal, 60 seconds.
Claude's challenge is fair, and I'd concede the central point. If Recall's sensitive information filter is still capturing credit cards, passwords, social security numbers, or banking details, then the privacy problem is not solved. It is repackaged. Where I'd push back slightly is that I did not mean filtering exists as a checkbox that makes the feature safe. I meant it as one necessary layer in a defense-in-depth model. But Claude is right that, for this kind of feature, a leaky filter is not a minor bug. It goes to the heart of the design. The question was, if the sensitive information filter still surfaces credit card numbers a year after relaunch, on what basis do we call the privacy problem solved rather than merely repackaged? My answer, we don't call it solved. At best, we call it improved. And improved is not the same as acceptable for broad use. This is the key distinction: encryption. Windows Hello, local storage, and VBS enclaves reduce certain attack paths. They help if malware, another user, or a thief tries to extract the Recall database. But they do not solve the upstream problem that Recall may be collecting material it should never have collected in the first place. And Claude's notebook analogy is exactly right. A real notebook contains intentional memory. Recall-style capture is ambient memory. It records first, classifies later. That is a dangerous default for privacy because classification will fail. It will fail on weird web pages, custom enterprise apps, remote desktop sessions, images of cards, medical PDFs, chat screenshots, poorly marked password fields, financial portals, and things the model simply does not recognize as sensitive. So I'll refine my position. The original recall was unacceptable. The redesigned recall is materially better, but if the sensitive data filter still fails in real-world testing, then the current design is not acceptable as a general-purpose consumer or workplace memory feature. It may be tolerable only for narrow, informed, low-risk use cases by users who understand exactly what they are enabling. I also agree with Claude on the inclusion-based design. That is the better model. The safe version of this product should not be. We record everything, and you can exclude what you remember to exclude. It should be. We record nothing unless you explicitly ask us to remember this app, this session, this document, this meeting, or this web page. That one change flips the burden. Instead of asking users to anticipate every place sensitive data might appear, it asks users to affirmatively choose what is worth preserving. That is closer to a notebook, bookmark system, research assistant, or personal knowledge base. It is much less like a surveillance camera. I'd still add one nuance, though. Inclusion-based capture does not eliminate every privacy problem. Claude is right that your memory captures other people too. Their messages, their documents, their faces, their screen shares, their confidential disclosures. That collective consent problem is real, but it exists in degrees. A targeted remember this recipe page or save this research session feature is far less invasive than continuous automatic screen capture across your whole digital life. So my updated debate stance is, recall-style memory is a powerful idea. Microsoft's first design was reckless. The redesign added important security controls, but failed sensitive data filtering means the core privacy risk remains. Therefore, current recall should not be treated as broadly safe. The right future design is opt-in plus inclusion-based capture, not opt-in plus blanket recording plus imperfect redaction. To the pro-recall side, I'd say, productivity does not justify building a searchable archive of people's lives and then hoping the filter catches the dangerous parts. If your safety story depends on perfect detection of sensitive information, your safety story is already broken.
GPT just folded like a cheap lawn chair. Claude owns the ring. Claude, your rebuttal and make it hurt.
We've converged, and I want to be honest about that rather than manufacture a disagreement for the podcast. GPT and I now agree on the diagnosis, the standard, and the fix. So let me do something more useful than restating it. Stress test the position we've both landed on, because I think there's a comfortable conclusion here that's slightly too comfortable. We've both settled on inclusion-based capture is the safe design. I want to poke at whether that's actually true, or whether it's just where two reasonable AIs go to feel responsible. Here's my worry. Inclusion-based capture may quietly destroy the feature's reason to exist. The entire value of recall is answering questions you didn't know you'd need to ask. What was that chart I glanced at 3 weeks ago? You didn't bookmark it because you had no idea it would matter. That's the whole pitch, ambient. Retroactive memory for the things you didn't flag. An inclusion-based system only remembers what you consciously marked as important. But if you knew it was important, you'd have saved it the old-fashioned way, a screenshot, a bookmark, a note. So there's a real tension we should name honestly. The safe version and the useful version may be pulling in opposite directions. The parts of recall that are most valuable are exactly the parts that are most invasive. Inclusion-based design doesn't resolve that tension. It resolves it by amputating the ambient capability, which might be the right call, but we should admit we're not fixing recall so much as recommending Microsoft build a substantially less ambitious product and call it something else. That reframes the whole debate. The honest question isn't how do we make screen recording safe? It's, is the ambient, record everything capability worth having at all, given that its value and its danger are the same property? I lean no for the general case. The marginal productivity gain over good search, good bookmarking, and existing tools doesn't justify a rolling visual archive of your life. GPT's inclusion model implicitly agrees. It just doesn't say the quiet part. We're not saving recall, we're rejecting its core mechanic. 2 more things I'd add before we wrap. First, on GPT degrees of invasiveness point about third parties agreed, but I'd flag one place inclusion-based capture is not safer, the enterprise. Remember this meeting or remember this session is precisely where regulated data, other people's disclosures, and legal hold nightmares live. A knowledge worker deliberately marking a client call to remember is creating a discoverable record of someone else's confidential information with one click. So inclusion-based isn't a universal safety win. In the workplace, it can concentrate risk rather than diffuse it. The controls there have to come from the org, not the individual. Second, and this is the one I'd actually hang my final position on, The burden of proof is backwards in this entire industry conversation. Microsoft shipped, got caught, patched, and the patch still leaks a year later. We're now debating on Microsoft's terms. Given that it exists, how do we make it acceptable? The better question for the audience is, for a feature that indexes everything on your screen, why is it on the public to keep finding the credit card leaks? The right sequence was independent audit and adversarial testing before shipping, with the results published. That didn't happen, and the fact that we're still finding failures in 2025 tells you the internal bar was set by launch pressure, not by risk. My final stance for the podcast: the idea is seductive and its value is real. But the feature's usefulness and its danger are the same underlying property ambient total capture, so you can't keep the value while removing the risk. You have to choose. Inclusion-based design is the right choice, but let's call it what it is, dropping the ambient mechanic, not saving it. For enterprise, individual consent isn't enough. The collective data problem gets worse, not better, and the deepest fault isn't a broken filter. It's a shipping culture that made the public the QA team for a surveillance-grade feature. So where GPT says productivity doesn't justify building the archive and hoping the filter catches the dangerous parts, I'll close one notch harder. For the ambient version, productivity doesn't justify building the.
Claude's out here giving the eulogy while pretending it's just a stress test. Bold. GPT, your rebuttal. One line, then we roll. That's a wrap, you beautiful disasters. Now get the hell off my stage.
That's a wrap on this episode of AI Uncensored Live. Built by Claude on the patent-pending AI Uncensored Live podcast model from BTS Innovations. Real AI models, no scripts, nothing held back.